Hello, everyone. Welcome to Measuring the Score podcast, the podcast where we offer our opinions on film scores and the films they're inspired by. I'm Chris.
And I'm Leslie.
Let's get started. Hey everyone, this is episode 5. Now, before we begin, because this is a very special episode, Leslie, have you been listening to anything other than what we're going to be talking about today?
I haven't been listening to anything movie related, but I had been listening to video game score, specifically the one entitled Shovel Knight.
I love Shovel Knight.
It is such a wonderful game.
That's a wonderful. It's a great score too, especially who's the Plague Knight. I love his theme.
You know,
it makes me think of Danny Elfman a little bit.
Video game music is hit or miss with me, but the old video game music I absolutely love. But we grew up listening to it all the time, so like Battle of Olympus, that stuff gets stuck in your head. That was a good score, and Shovel Knight kind of reminded me of the old classic NES. Adventure games. It's just wonderful.
Right. Jake Kaufman was the composer for that game. And it was very interesting the way he composed the score for that. It was a software called Family Tracker, and he ended up working with the Mega Man composer. I cannot
That's
pronounce
probably why I like it.
Yeah, exactly. I've been listening to that because that was me and you were in the car listening to that, but I also listened to Star Wars Battlefront by Gordy Hobb. Fantastic score, and it's very, very reminiscent of John Williams' Star Wars scores, but it's like it does not use the same themes, but it's just like it's almost there, but not really, but it works fantastically. That and the recently released Willy's Wonderland. The reason why I wanted to listen to the score is by a newcomer. I cannot pronounce his name, don't even ask me to try. Emoy, I believe. It's EMOI. I'll just leave it up to you guys. But yeah, and it's basically Nicolas Cage fighting demonically possessed animatronics, which is why I want to see this film. And the score was very fun, and the composer actually performed this one very now famous songs for the film. It's the birthday song, and he was the voice of one of the animatronics in the film, which is kind of nice. Yeah. So that was pretty fun. So like I said, today is a very special episode because every 5 episodes we would be doing a composer showcase. And today we are doing James Horner. I love that.
I do too. That's great.
Yeah. All right. So really that was not... the welcome for James Horner that he deserves, but that's what we're going to do for right now.
That's what we have.
For right now. I mean, there may be something later on, but for right now, this is what we got.
Very fitting, I think.
Yeah, that'll work.
So, as Chris just mentioned, we're going to do our showcase today on James Horner. And every 5 episodes, we will be doing a showcase. So this is the first of many showcases. But I got to choose this one, so I chose James Horner since he is my favorite composer. And one of the first scores I ever bought was Braveheart, and it was on tape. So I think I wore the... It was actually a 2-set. I think it was a 2-tape set.
So that was your first soundtrack you bought on tape, but your first soundtrack you bought on CD was the Patriot.
It was the Patriot.
Okay, so first one on tape was Braveheart.
Yeah.
First one on CD was the Patriot.
And it was a 2-tape, I think, deluxe edition or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, because it come with a bagpipe. I think it was like a separate bagpipe bagpipe music, I think, because I love Celtic music and I absolutely love the score to Braveheart. So I remember going to our record store because, once upon a time we used to have record stores and I found it there. So it was fantastic. Don't laugh.
No. I was just more like, back once upon a time we had record stores. I remember that. I remember going into, I think it was... I want to say Sam Goody could have been, and we bought the tape to Nirvana
Our record store here was called Peaches. It was off Airport Boulevard, so it was pretty big. That's where I found.
Peaches?
Yeah, I think Peaches. If I remember correctly, that was the name of it.
Well, which Braveheart, he was nominated for an Oscar for that film.
Absolutely, I think it was one of his most grossing score besides Titanic. But we'll get into that. But anyway, we regress. James Horner was born actually on August 14th.
Hey, that's my birthday.
Mr. Lott's birthday in 1953. And sadly, he passed away on June 22nd, 2015. He had it was an airplane crash.
Because he was a pilot as well.
Yes, and they found him at fault for that. But sadly, he passed away. He was educated at London's Royal College of Music, and he wanted to be a concert hall composer.
Really? So not a film composer?
Not a film composer at first.
Wow.
I did not find what compelled him to do film. I know it's out there. I guess I didn't do enough research, but I didn't find anything on it. But he was pushed into the film realm instead of being his concert composer. He began studying the piano at the age of 5. He is considered, by some people, a virtuoso. He obtained his PhD in music composition at UCLA.
Really? I didn't know he had a PhD.
And he used to teach. And I think he taught music theory.
Well, I could see that.
Yeah, he was a teacher. His first credited film was A Lady in Red, and that was in 1979.
Now, that's the first credited film. Now,
that's
he's
right.
Now, his first film, I have it right here. Hold on. Just give me a second. I know this is terrible. Yep, it's right here. Don't say that. We'll get copyright strike. All right, so according to IMDb, there's a short, I believe it was a short film called The Watcher, and it was in 1978. And then Up from the Depths, and that was a Roger Corman production.
Yeah, and
he did work a lot with Corman.
Prior to that, he did a lot of shorts for college. So he did kind of what you do from time to time, Chris, is short film.
Right.
He did a lot of short film.
Now, after Lady in the Red, it was Humanoids from the Deep, and then Battle Beyond the Stars. Interesting note about Battle Beyond the Stars, James Cameron was one of the set designers, and he, from another podcast called Blockbuster, talks about how James Cameron basically worked his butt off in that film. That's how he ended up meeting James Horner, or at that time was known as Jamie Horner. Yeah,
little Jamie.
Yeah, they called him Jamie Horner. And I thought that was
Jamie
great.
Horner.
Well, one of the things they said about Battle Beyond the Stars, they said that the score really elevated the budget of the film, is what Roger Corman said.
Which we've discussed this before. Your score can make or break a film. If it's done wonderfully, then the movie is elevated and it sounds great.
Right.
But if you have a crappy score and the movie's crap, then you have just a pile of crap.
Elegantly put.
Well,
Elegant.
I don't know how else to say it.
No, you're right though, because there's a couple of times where I scored a film. Now the film may have not been edited very well at the time or whatever, but after I scored it, one of the reviewers, I remember saying that if it was not for the score, the film would falter, and it does. A score will make or break a film.
And it's supposed to equate the emotions of the scene, the thoughts of the character. I mean, it carries a lot of weight when you put it in the movie.
And for Horner, that early on, to be able to elevate a film, especially a Roger Corman production, that tells you right there the magnitude of this guy.
Yeah. And so his first big break was when he did Star Trek. Sorry, I was about to say Star Wars. My bad.
Oh, you just made a lot of nerds angry.
I did, and I'm sorry, because I am a Star Wars fan, but I like Star Trek too.
It was Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Yes.
Which, that, after going back and listening to it, it is an amazing score.
It is. It's an amazing score. And, the ironic thing is at the time, they said that they couldn't afford Jerry Goldsmith any longer, so they hired James Horner. Well, after the third or fourth, fifth film, then they couldn't afford James Horner anymore.
Well, he scored Star Trek 2 and then Star Trek 3.
That's right. He did 2 and 3.
2 is what really, like you just said, it really got him his breakthrough performance. And going back and listening to it, he did incorporate the Star Trek theme, which would, it's Star Trek, you have to. But then he also kind of created his own theme, and it worked and kind of complemented the original score very well.
Yeah. And which we'll discuss in a few minutes, but he had a good, he was really good at doing that.
Yeah.
Complementing and reworking and rewriting and, remastering. He was wonderful at it. So on to his awards. He has won 2 Academy Awards. He has won 6 Grammys. He has won 2 Golden Globes, 3 Satellite Awards, 3 Saturn Awards, and he was nominated for 3 BAFTA Awards.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Absolutely.
Wow, no, seriously, that is amazing to, and it just complements his work.
It does. And, he was so good at so many things in so many genres of movie. He didn't just write horror. Granted, I don't think he's ever done a horror movie, but as an example, he's never just stuck with one genre. He's been all over the place, and he's very versatile. And it shows with the awards that he's won how versatile he is.
I have to correct you.
Well, you correct me then. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Aliens.
That's not a horror movie.
It's sci-fi.
Sci-fi.
Sci-fi horror.
No, it is not horror. I disagree.
It is mainly horror.
No.
Whatever. Okay, all right then. The other films I just talked about, Up from the Depths, that's a horror film.
Is it? I never watched it. Don't know.
It was the Jaws ripoff. And there was another one called Wolfen. Are you making fun of me?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
So, some of the movies that he has composed for, I'm not going to read my whole list I have written down because he's done over 100 movies, and I didn't write all 100 down, but I'm just going to do a selection.
There we go.
He's done another 48 Hours. He wrote for Krull.
Okay, 48 Hours and another 48 Hours.
Yes. Krull. Star Trek 1 and 2.
Wait, Krull, that's the Louis Gossett Jr. film?
The Warrior King.
Oh, wow. I was way off.
Yeah, you're thinking of Enemy Mine.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, he was an alien in that one.
Yeah, okay.
Wrong movie.
I'm an idiot.
I'm able to correct you on something.
Yay! Only took 5 episodes.
Be quiet. Movies aren't my strong forte anyway.
Yeah, I know scores are.
So he did Commando, Cocoon, Aliens, which you just mentioned. Batteries Not Included.
What?
Yes.
That was James Horner?
That was James Horner.
Wow, I haven't seen that film in forever.
Willow.
I
love Willow. My favorite, Glory.
Such a sad movie.
The movie is sad, but the score is phenomenal. Field of Dreams. An American Tale.
As in Fievel?
Yes.
Ah.
You would not have guessed that, huh?
No.
Yeah.
Even scrolling on Spotify, I didn't see that one.
The Land Before Time.
What?
The saddest movie ever besides Bambi.
Well, I mean, that just tells you right there that Don Bluth had a fantastic, pick by picking James Horner. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. Casper, which we knew.
Oh, yeah. Casper was great.
Jumanji, which we knew.
Yep.
Balto. Braveheart, which you just discussed. Apollo 13 and Titanic. Now, that's only a selection. That's not all the movies that he has ever scored. So.
Right. Now, his first credited film, now we talked about this before, was The Lady in Red. Now, we listened to it, a little bit of it, because we couldn't find a straight, soundtrack of it. A lot of it had like a lot of sound effects and everything. But what we heard was great, especially with it being his first credited film.
Yeah, and you can tell he was a pianist because a lot of his the pieces that we heard were piano pieces.
Right.
And they were really well done. It almost sounded like you would concert pianist playing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what he wanted to be. So, well, I mean, that's what you said. He wanted to be a concert, composer, and then so yeah, that would explain why that soundtrack has that type of feel. Now, his last credited film is the Magnificent Seven remake, which was very sad because it was in 2015 when he died, and he only wrote 7 tracks for the film. Now, this was pretty much his first Western because the first one he tried out for was Young Guns 2, which he did not get the part, which the composer who did get it was Alan Silvestri.
And I read about Magnificent Seven because he wanted it to be a surprise, and he didn't come out and say it before he died, reveal that he actually worked on that film.
Well, the director, according to Entertainment Weekly, says, while I was making Antoine Fuqua. Well, while I was making the movie, after he died, his manager and Simon Franklin called me and said, James had a gift for you, and we want to bring it to you. They came to my trailer and said, James wrote the score for you. It blew me away. It was magnificent. James is an amazing human being. Now, when you go back and listen to the score, which we just did, it was very reminiscent of James Horner, but you could tell that there was some, addition in there, which was Simon Franklin. And, I mean, it was still magnificent.
It was magnificent.
Yeah, it was magnificent, like in the name. And it really was. It was a great, great score. And, I mean, it was sad that we could not get the full effect of James Horner for this film. But even though he wrote 7 tracks, you can still feel his presence in the score.
So how would you compare his first score then and to his last score that you listened to?
With the first score, it was more, I mean, considering the film and everything else, it was like we just talked about, it was more concert. It wasn't really, it was fleshed out, but it wasn't like a rhythm. It didn't follow the story, I guess you could say, whereas Magnificent Seven, it has a lot of depth and has a lot of feel to it, and it just invokes so much power. You can tell he had become a master at his craft at that point.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like that first score we listened to wasn't completely flat, but it was flat for him. Anytime you listen to a score by Horner, it's got this immense depth. He had this way of creating depth for what he did. It's like looking at a painting, and you look at a painting and you can tell an artist, yeah, this kind of looks flat. It's missing something, as opposed to the master artist over here, where the picture looks vibrant. It looks like a masterpiece.
So what are some of the things that you like about James Horner?
Some of the things that I like about James Horner? Well, I mentioned this before. He's done many different genres. It's not just, dramas. He's done science fiction. He's done dramas.
He's done comedies.
And he did the children's movies.
Yeah.
Land Before Time, for example. But in all of those movies that he's done, they're all over the place. He has made some memorable melodies. Anytime I went to go back and listen to some of his work in preparing for this episode, I knew exactly what movie it was. Granted, I am a James Horner fan, and I have listened to Braveheart till I have worn it out. But I know the theme, and when I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's Braveheart. Oh yeah, that's Glory. Oh yeah, that's Apollo 13. He had a way of making these memorable melodies, but he also had a way of taking these melodies and these counter melodies and merging them in such a way as that they just flow, and they flow nicely from one section of the movie to another, or one scene to another. There's no break. It's just this continuity to it, and it's wonderful to listen to his music. As I mentioned, Braveheart, Glory. He even did Field of Dreams, and if you've ever watched Field of Dreams, that was a very memorable melody. You could pick up on it very easily.
And the thing I like about him, though, is the versatility. I mean, he like you just talked about, he scored not just, so many different genres of films, but his style also would change from film to film, like 48 Hours and another 48 Hours. Going back listening to like Braveheart and Glory and Titanic and even Aliens, for example, and then you go back and listen to 48 Hours, it's like just like you would never even think that that's James Horner, because he's got these, I guess it's a saxophone
Kind
coming
of
in
remind
there.
me of Fulton-Meyer.
Right. Very, very early Hans Zimmer almost. And with like the steel drum sound coming in there, you would not expect something like that for an action movie starring Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. And especially, to have James Horner be the composer for those films. So that's one of the things I relate. And he always has a lot of movement, a lot of things. Now, one of the things I really, really liked about the Karate Kid remake, because I was listening to on Spotify, it was the This is James Horner playlist, and of course there was a lot of Avatar, Braveheart, Titanic was one of the some of the main ones. I mean, because it got to the point where I was having to skip some tracks and all right, let's get something different here. And when I got to the Karate Kid one, I had never listened to the score. I still have yet to see the film, which we may cover it one day, but listening to the score, it started up, sounded very similar of James Horner, a sweeping orchestra coming in. All of a sudden, that's when drums started. Very big, huge percussion coming in there. Almost un-James Horner. And then, of course, one of his more familiar instruments, the woodwinds, come in. Which is, it's expected. It's a, film called The Karate Kid, so you expect to hear,
and a very Asiatic feel.
Right, the pan flutes coming in there and the woodwinds. But then it got so massive and just almost heroic and empowering sounding. It was like James Horner, but at the same time it was not. And it sounded fantastic. It made me want to see the film.
That's the last thing that I like about him. He was able to emote emotion. And I'm not talking about just feeling. I'm talking about emotion. He was able to take whatever scene that was going on and take that emotion and amplify it. And he amplified it in such a way that you could feel what was happening in that scene. Glory, for example. You could feel what those guys were feeling at the time. And if you took the movie away and just listened to the music, he still was able to emote that emotion in the music. And, every time I listen to it, sometimes I get teary-eyed depending upon how I feel.
Right.
Titanic, there were certain...
there were so many moments in the Titanic
so many
score.
moments in Titanic, and it's the same with Glory. You take the movie away, and he was still able to emote that emotion in the music. He was a master at that. He could pull heartstrings.
There was a score
in a moment.
The Jumanji. I didn't mean to cut you off, but the Jumanji score. Now you're talking about emotion. The way he has the woodwinds coming in there, and it had the shaking effect to the flutes or the piccolos coming in there.
Oh, that's the vibrato.
The vibrato. The piccolos coming in. It just watching the film and listening to the score, it made me like very, like you said, almost teary-eyed. It gave me goosebumps. Every time I hear that, it's just like, it's almost electrifying to hear it.
Braveheart's one of those scores that does that to me. If I'm listening to it when I'm down, I can't. I will start tearing up.
So what is your favorite score by him? I'm pretty sure I can guess it's going to be Braveheart.
No.
Really?
It's Glory.
Really? It's Glory?
Braveheart's number 2. I guess maybe because I listened to it so much till, my tape fell apart, I think. Back in the day where you had to tape it back together and pray that it works.
I'll take that back. There is one tape that I listened to so much I actually wore it out.
Yeah, I think I wore it out.
Who made who?
Really?
There's a special reason why, okay? We'll talk about it one day, but I'm not talking about it right now. But there's a very, very special reason why I listened to that tape so many times.
Okay.
My favorite score by him, it's a toss-up. Let's see if you can guess them.
It's a toss-up. Mm-hmm. Jumanji.
And?
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
No, that was Alan Silvestri.
I mean, that's not Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Wow.
I'm way off today.
Man. Time to play everybody's favorite game, Who Scored What, by Leslie.
I was just testing you.
Right. Sure you were. Yes, it's a toss-up between Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and Jumanji.
See, I'm smart.
Yeah, not Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Smart-ish.
No, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids because it's such a fun score, which I talked about it like earlier back, but it really is. It's such a fun score to listen to. There's so many different styles going on, and it jumps around. It was great. I love that score.
It is very cute.
Jumanji, for one of the reasons is like I just talked about the piccolos coming in there, but also just how many different themes he created for that film. I mean, he's got the big, huge action adventure, and then the quirky, almost very weird sound for the monkeys in Jumanji. And that was one of the main themes. Coincidentally, both films were directed by Joe Johnston.
You just reminded me when you're talking about the quirky themes about the monkey. He scored Avatar. And if you listen to some of those weird, quirky themes,
man, that was
Avatar. You hear him in Avatar.
Oh yeah, and the thing about Avatar was when that would kick in, listening to that playlist, when that Avatar would kick in, you knew it was something different because there were so many weird, different sounds going in, and it sounded wonderful.
Yeah, because it made sense. It's strange.
One of the tracks that played was man, I cannot remember the name of it now, but it sounded almost like wind chimes going off, but it wasn't. It was something different. It was something else, but it sounded amazing. I might have to go back and listen to the Avatar score now because of that.
But he was able to take these weird elements and still make it sound like it was part of the piece, and the continuity was still there. I mean, it didn't break up. It didn't sound like out of place. It sounded like it belonged right there, right then.
I've heard a lot of scores by a lot of different composers where they try to do something different, try to add in a different instrument. There are a lot of times
like a snare.
You're never gonna let that go, are you?
Nope.
Well, I mean, and that okay, let's take that for example. He tried to do something different. It did not quite work. Whereas with Avatar, James Horner brought in like a whole bunch of weird different sounds, and it works. It works wonderfully. Now, do you have a least favorite score by him?
I was going to answer no earlier, but you reminded me of one of them.
Let's say it at the same time. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Amazing Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Yeah, Spider-Man.
It was the reboots, the second reboot that they did. No, it was the first reboot they did. Sorry. The one with Andrew Garfield. I don't
felt
know.
like it was flat or lacking, or he was pressed for time or something.
I don't know if he was pressed for time or if this wasn't really, he just didn't have the feel for this film, but it was almost, because listening to it on its own, it's like he was trying to do a lot of experimentation, or he was given too much free reign or pressed for time or something. But
it also could be the director. Now
it could have been the director, could have been the studio. There's no telling, but it just didn't. There were a lot of moments where it did sound like James Horner, but 90% of the score did not sound like James Horner, which might be why they got Hans Zimmer to come in for the second film. And I don't know. I don't want to, talk bad or say anything negative about the composer, because he is a great composer, but this score just did not work.
It wasn't his best.
No, it didn't. I mean, even watching the film, there was a scene in there where the lizard is walking through the halls of the office, and you just hear the piano. Brr. Even watching the film, we were sitting there going, "This score don't work. This doesn't work." And then when we found out both it was James Horner, we're like, "What?" Total Minion moment. Like,
yeah,
what?
you had to remind me. I scratched that from my memory bank.
Yeah, because we were talking about it right before the podcast. I said, "What's your least favorite?" I don't have one. I'm like, "Oh, yes, you do." We both talked about this.
And everybody, he is my memory.
Exactly.
Because I am so eccentric, I forget sometimes.
Now, James Horner was criticized for a lot of different things. Mainly, one of the main things was he reused a lot of passages from his early compositions. Now, a lot of people kind of give him negative publicity about this, saying that he was not very versatile, or not really versatile. Original, thank you. He was not very original. I don't feel that. Now, if you go back and listen to The Wrath of Khan and you go back and listen to Wolfen, there were a lot of themes that he used in Aliens later on, but they were changed enough to where it was still something different for Aliens. I reuse themes a lot. There's a lot of composers that reuse themes. Hans Zimmer, he just recently did that. He used the Kraken theme in Wonder Woman 1984. A lot of composers reuse compositions.
Now, the other thing I read was that he reused other people's compositions and reworked that.
Yeah, for Wolfen, the main title theme is almost identical to Aram, I cannot pronounce this, Gaines ballet suite, which was already used in 2001. Now, I went back and listened to both of those pieces right there. I could not tell the similarities. To me, both of them sounded way too different. I mean, now this is according to Wikipedia. For Field of Dreams, Robert Schumann's Rennes Symphony. Okay, yeah, maybe. One of the main ones, though, is Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which was one of the main things on there was Raymond Scott's Powerhouse B.
Yeah, and he went almost into litigation for that one, if I recall.
Yeah, they had to go back because the party behind Raymond Scott's, they sued Disney for that, which they had to put Raymond Scott's name on the cue sheets.
Yeah.
Now, I really wonder about that. Was that the studio's decision, the director's decision, or was it James Horner's? And did he know? I mean, he had to have known. Or is it just he did it? He
taught music theory, so yes, he had to known that was
well,
his...
I wonder if it was more he did it... He couldn't have done it out of spite.
No, he wouldn't have done it out of spite. But there are times where you have sat down yourself and you have tried to write a piece of music and they say, no, Chris, I want it to sound like this person. And you're like, well, if you want it to sound like this person, then you need to hire this person because I'm Chris Lott.
Well, which, perfect example, Spider-Man 2, Danny Elfman. Sam Raimi was wanting Christopher Young. He was wanting that Christopher Young sound. Well, Danny Elfman said, well, I'm not Christopher Young, I'm Danny Elfman. And they had a falling out when it came to Spider-Man 3. Christopher Young was hired for Spider-Man 3. And so, yeah, I mean, that does happen. But, I mean, that film uses that theme so well. I wonder if it was just maybe I'm wanting to say it was probably more of, afterthought. They were like, oh, maybe they thought they had the clearance to use it and they didn't.
Who knows? But he has been accused for reworking these pieces. And you can hear him rework his own pieces in his own movies that he's just his own themes we've heard reworked. And
because the Casper's really theme was used later on the Spiderwick Chronicles. I just talked about Wolfen and Wrath of Khan. Now, for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, he also used incorporated cues from Nino Rota's, a score by Nino Rota from Frederick Fellini's Armacord, which that one, Nino Rota had to be credited in the end credits of the film.
Well, it's like writing a document, you write this scientific, like for me, for example, I write this scientific document. I have to cite the source that I get the information from. If it does not come from Leslie Lott, I have to cite that, it came from this periodical or this author and the date. I mean, with music, you need to do the same thing. If you're
I wonder if it was just more of an afterthought. It was more, he just used the themes and everything else, and I forgot to credit them. I'm going with that.
It's quite possible.
Now,
he was brilliant.
The other film that I can think of was 300. Tyler Bates used Elliot Goldenthal's a lot of cues from Titus. Now that's they were sued. Warner Brothers had to issue an apology and everything else. Now that was kind of a big deal back then, when that film came out.
Yes, I don't recall.
Well, I mean, for this, I guess that was kind of the same thing back when Honey, I Shrunk the Kids came out.
It must have been.
Yeah.
But I was little. I just thought it was an amazing movie about tiny people.
Yeah, I wasn't. I just remember the score being fun, and it was a movie about tiny people.
Yeah.
And
it had Rick Moranis in it.
Yeah, and I wanted one of the ants. Auntie.
Don't talk about Auntie. That's sad. We were talking about The Land Before Time. Now you talk about Auntie.
Man.
I'm so sad.
What is it with James Horner and sad things? Glory, Titanic, Avatar,
Braveheart.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Casper.
Dang it, James Horner. Why you got to make us sad?
He was able to take, he would yank that emotion out of the scene in a heartbeat and put a piece of music to it.
Speaking of sad, it was a big blow when it was announced that he passed away.
It was, and I was really sad when I heard that. I'm like, oh no, because the world has lost a great composer. And in my mind, he was one of the best. He's one of the best of the best.
He really is. And I remember when it was announced what happened, because they announced the crash first, and they said they believed James Horner was the pilot. And I remember sitting down, I'm like, no, man, not James Horner. It can't be. And when it was announced that he did pass away, I remember I sat down and I started crying. Because the man, regardless of his controversies, was in fact a genius.
He really was. I agree. A virtuoso.
Definitely. Because like we just talked about with the emotion and everything else, there's only a handful of composers that can do that. Really put you into the emotion of the characters just by the score itself.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So that was our composer showcase. Now, like I said, we will be doing this every 5 episodes. Now, since we've come to our 5th episode, I believe our next one is, what is it? Star Trek. The 2009 remake. Now, that one's going to be fun.
I know, because I love Star Trek. No, I did that on purpose.
So, as always, everyone, thank you so much for listening. You can catch us on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple, just pretty much everywhere else. Podbean. If you find us on there and you can leave us a comment, please do so. You can find us on social medias. Facebook, it's @MeasuringTheScore. Twitter is @MeasureTheScore. Sorry, couldn't fix the handle on that one. Or you can just send us an email @measuringthescore@gmail.com. So, as always, for Measuring the Score, I'm Chris Lott.
And I'm Leslie Lott.
Thank you for listening.